Our next speaker is Leighton Chipperfield, who's the Director of Publishing and Income Diversification at the Society for General Microbiology. His goal is to position the Society as a modern, sustainable, self-publishing organisation. And supported by staff, he has developed a fresh publishing strategy, launched 2 open access journals, upgraded operations, and led changes to the journal's online presence. Leighton's going to look at standards from a small publisher perspective, where they can and may be seen as both dull and a distraction.
So I'm going to be the controversial one. Can I ask you a question and be really honest? How many people in this room find standards exciting? Put your hands up. You fibbers. So I think ALPS is a really great organisation. I love coming here. You know, our staff get a lot out of the organisation through the year. And I was really excited when I was asked to speak, and I got the email through from Laura. And I saw what the topic was, and I thought, oh, no. But by the end of it, I hope you'll get to see that I don't think standards are I don't think standards are interesting, but they're not exciting. Okay, they are interesting and they're important. Let me tell you a true story. About a month ago, my car broke down. Okay, it was a Friday night, and I've been in London. I walked back to my car. I was looking forward to the weekend and seeing the kids. And I started the car up and it wouldn't go. So I walked home, I called the AA the next morning, and a nice man came and looked at it, and he did some little tests, and he said, it's your ignition coil. And I don't know how cars work, I don't know what's under the bonnet, but that's ignition coil, right? And he said, that's okay, because the Ford Mondeo, my clapped out old Ford Mondeo, uses a standard ignition coil, and I've got some of these in my van, hang on a minute. And he went and had a look, and he came back and he said, I'm really sorry, your Ford Mondeo isn't one of the standard ones that uses the standard part. So it was a standard, but it wasn't standard enough. And as I prepared this talk, 2 thoughts emerged. The first was that I shouldn't produce any slides, because I think putting a talk on standards on straight after lunch is really mean. But the second is that the lack of a standard in that case, caused a problem for me, it caused a problem for my family, caused a problem for the AA guy because he had to tow me to the garage when he didn't really need to. And actually, when you don't have a standard or people don't follow the standard, it can be a massive pain in the backside. So I want to give you a small publisher perspective on standards. I'm going to tell you a bit about what we do at the Society for General Microbiology to do that. We are a self-publisher. Not many of us left these days, but we still self-publish. But I actually like to say that we're a hybrid publisher. And what that means is that I have managers in-house who oversee the different functions. So we have a production manager, a marketing manager, and so on. But actually the day-to-day work, much of that we outsource to big suppliers. We publish 6 journals. We have about 4,000 submissions a year. And really importantly, we're not a limited company. We are one department of a learner society, which is also a registered charity. We've gone through a lot of changes in the past 3 years. We've launched 2 new journals. We've updated many of our processes. We've launched a new journal online hosting platform. And ultimately, our ambition is to be a digital-first publisher. We're moving in that direction. You'll see through what I'm going to say that we're moving quite quickly in that direction. But at the same time, we're still servicing those wonderful customers who still seem to want print for some reason. And that's a challenge. So we are busy. We're really busy. We don't do anything for the sake of it. And we use standards to make us more productive and allow us to be more innovative. So as I said, we choose to work with vendors at different stages of our supply chain. And I'm going to talk a bit about how standards help us in that journey. So firstly, when we use standards, it means that we can talk the same language as our suppliers or our customers. So when we talk about counter reports to a librarian or subscription agent or to our platform vendor, we all know what we're talking about. There's no room for misunderstanding. And sometimes when you're dealing with suppliers directly, or even marshalling suppliers to deal with each other, which is a complete nightmare, there's a high risk of misunderstanding and miscommunication. So as I said, we're on this journey to become a fully digital first publisher. And for us, XML is really at the heart of that. we use the JATS DTD. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but the joy of XML is that we use it to produce our content, to host our content, and then to help distribute the content onto places like PubMed. And it's hard to imagine how a small publisher like us could actually function without XML, and how much longer we'd take to do all those things. In terms of discoverability, at the moment we use XML to support faceted searches across the journals on our publishing technology platform. And that's just a start. So in future we'd like to apply an ontology to this. But again, as we heard from the Microsoft guy earlier, the XML gives us the platform to do that as and when the time is right. Beyond that, we use DOIs, we use locks, we use clocks, and all the other things you'd expect. And we're starting to use data DOIs as well, and we've just launched a new open access journal, which has a mandatory open data policy. So as a small publisher then, our adoption of all these standards means we can benefit from the scale of the suppliers that we work with, but indirectly we also benefit from the standards the suppliers themselves use. For example, the responsive design for our journal websites was based on emergent industry standards there. But actually it also means we have a freedom to move suppliers if we want to now and again, because when you use standards properly, it's really only the supplier which is changing, not the output. And I know this because over the last year we've moved both to a new hosting platform and a new submission system. We've moved to Aries. And as you can imagine, this involves many, many changes. But I think one of the reasons that we've done both of those projects really well is that we were already using the DTDs, the counter, and all the other things I've mentioned. And so what the standards do is they provide a point of continuity for us and our customers when everything else is changing. And as we went through those transitions, actually the main problems we found was when standards weren't being followed or when there weren't historically standards available. And just to give you one quick example, we're a microbiology publisher, so we don't publish many equations, but when we went through the archive content, we found that when we did publish equations, they were massive. They were taking up whole pages. And it turned out that if we'd had Math Excel and Math Jax, in the days where that content has been produced, then these super size me versions wouldn't have happened. So I've talked primarily about technical standards so far. But of course, it's not just about the technical stuff. For my editorial team and our editors, the COPE guidelines on publication ethics are used very much as a standard for dealing with such cases. And the decision trees and everything else that COPE do means that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And that's another big thing for us. We just don't have the resources to come up with new standards ourselves. But we can say that we follow an accepted, transparent process on dealing with such matters. So I think there's a really interesting question here, maybe we can come back to it later, about when a guideline, a best practice guideline, actually moves on to become standard. I want to spend a little time talking about identifiers now. We use DOIs, as I said, we use data DOIs. We do ask authors to provide their ORCID, but we just ask them, we don't tell them yet, maybe in a few years' time. And at the moment, we just use that for author disambiguation. But I think beyond the publishing operation which I run, I think identifiers can actually go a really long way to supporting the activities of my learner society. And I want to talk a bit about that now. So our mission at my society is to advance the understanding and impact of microbiology, and this is the important bit, by connecting and empowering communities worldwide, connecting and empowering. Now at the moment, my society is like many others. Our data tends to live in silos. So we have an author database, a member database, a conference attendee database. None of them talk to each other. But actually, I want to know if Jane Smith in Glasgow has been an author in our journals, whether or not she's a member, when she last went to our conference. Okay? I want to know that John Smith in London is an editor of one of my journals and that he did go to the conference this year, but he's not a member. I'd really like to know that Jack Jones in Cardiff authored 5 open access papers for us last year, but he's not a member, so we can offer him membership to the society and then he can start to get a discount on his EPCs. And all of that is really, really tough to do when you're data is siloed. So I want to start to use identifiers at my society to build a really rich view of our customers and how they interact with us. Because it's vital that if we're going to connect communities, we first need to know more about the individuals in those communities. And all these things are possible with modern CRM systems, and I think by using identifiers in this way. And when we can start to analyse the data, we can start to personalise our messages to Jane and John and Jack and offer them the things we know they would like. And I think the same can be said of institutional identifiers like the Ringgold system, and I'm not just saying that because Laura sat there. At one level, I think it's really important for my staff to know about the parent and child relationships between institutions, especially for selling subscriptions, which we also do in-house. But of course, an institutional identifier system also allows us to look at members, grant holders, conference attendees, and journal authors in an institution and ask ourselves how we can bring those circles in the Venn diagram closer together. In other words, gap analysis, upselling, and doing what our colleagues in the commercial world have been doing for many years. So for me, actually, the proper use of identifiers will be key to enabling small publishers and learner societies to unlock the value from the data they hold. But if identifiers are the key to creating value from data, then I think that APIs are the key for small publishers like me to unlock value from technology. I think APIs put small publishers like me on a level playing field. At my society, we could never afford the development work it would take to link myriad systems with each other, but with APIs, the process becomes so much easier. And as an example, we've partnered with altmetrics.com via an API on our hosting platform just recently. APIs also give publishers like me an opportunity to generate new revenues. We're starting to be approached now by third parties who see value in our content and who want to link from our content to their services. And APIs again mean that the development work for us and the platform is minimal, and when these services go live, they will create valuable new sources of income for us. And so once again, that equation of low work, high financial return is one that in the current environment is really attractive to small publishers and learner societies. So on face value, I still don't think standards are very exciting. And I don't really care about what's under the bonnet. I just care about how I get to my destination. But I think the thing is, when you stop and look under the bonnet, even if it's a knackered old Ford Mondeo bonnet, actually what you realise is that without standards, you won't be going anywhere. And I think as we look to the future, technology and data are going to have an even bigger part to play for publishers and societies alike. And so standards will really need to step up to enable us to deal with those challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Thank you.